All right, let's take one last look at your traffic and weather for ride in on this Thursday morning. Several accidents to report. One at Harbison and I-26, one at I-26 eastbound at Lake Murray Boulevard, one at Sunset near Mineral Springs, another one at I-77 northbound at Garner's Ferry, and one more at I-26 eastbound at Lake Murray Boulevard as well. Today, high of 77 with lots of sunshine, pretty similar tomorrow. Saturday for game day, high of 80 with plenty of sunshine as well. Currently sitting at 60 here in downtown Columbia. That's traffic and weather from the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center here on The Game. Oh, 9 o'clock on your Thursday morning. Welcome in. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Ed and Jack Veltri along with you as always. I guess we are officially at the halfway point of the month of October. Halfway through the season, halfway through the month of October. Jack, I feel like yesterday it was August 31st and we were kicking off against Virginia Tech, and now we're here.
Dude, something about football season. Every single year, it just flies by. It's like we're already in week 8 of the college football season. Like, it is insane how fast time has flown by, man.
I will say I'm thankful that we have the extra bye week this year, because that does technically extend the season a little bit longer with the way that Labor Day falls and all that kind of stuff. So technically we are getting more college football this year than in most years. So it's at least a week longer.
I love it. I love having the double bye week every year. I wish it were the case, but, we'll see next year. I'm sure we'll go back to the singular bye week.
Yeah, because I think Labor Day is like September 5th or 6th next year.
Yeah, the season starts a bit later next year.
Yeah, it'll go back to one bye week next year. Now, again, when the NFL inevitably decides they want to go to 18 games and they move their schedule up to Labor Day, then maybe we just make week 0 week number 1 and we just extend it out and have 2 bye weeks every single year, which I'd be a fan of.
Oh, that'd be great. Let's do it. I mean, the NFL, I think, inevitably is going to move to 2 bye weeks in the future. I mean, their season is just so long. And
well, let's be honest, they should have gone to 2 bye weeks with 17 games. They haven't, but if you go to 18 games, you definitely got to do it.
No, it would make all the sense in the world, right? So we'll see if the NFL does that.
A lot of things to get into concerning this Oklahoma game, which we will in just a moment, starting with the availability report. Last night, Major League Baseball, a little bit of quieter night from a sports perspective. Major League Baseball continues to roll on with game number 3 of the ALCS. The Blue Jays finally get on the board in this one in dominant fashion, home run after home run after home run, as they rout the Mariners 13-4 on the heels of Shane Beamer's solid pitching outing, going 6 innings, giving up 4 hits and only 2 earned runs. And, well, we've got the series back to at least one game back in their favor, and we'll see if they can steal another one in Seattle coming up tonight.
Did you say Shane Beamer?
I did say Shane Beamer. Dang it. Bill made that same mistake yesterday. Shane Bieber.
Shane Bieber.
It's so close. It's an easy mistake to make.
Just think of Justin. That's all you got.
I know.
Really good performance last night for the Jays. Look, they needed it desperately. George Kirby was not good last night. Mariners starting pitcher. 4 innings, 8 hits, 8 runs given up. And a lot of those were home runs. I mean, this is what the Blue Jays offense can do. And they got a decent enough pitching performance last night to where it's like, you were going to win anyway with the amount of runs you scored. But it's good to see that their pitching actually held up in this game. And you got one. You still got to go in here. And you'd like to win another so that way you can at least force a Game 6 back to Toronto, because that gives you the advantage of that moving forward.
Yeah, and again, I thought what the Mariners did through the first couple games, stealing the 2 in Toronto, meant that they had things pretty well in hand there. And again, it's hard to sweep a series, but with the way the Blue Jays offense looked last night, it's like, okay, maybe they're turning the corner here a little bit off the heels of their 5 home runs last night. And again, we'll get game number 4 coming up tonight. to see if Toronto can end up evening the series with Game 3 of the NLCS coming up tonight as well to see if the Brewers can finally get themselves off the board after talk about great pitching. The Dodgers have done phenomenal with their two starters in Snell and Yamamoto through their first two outings.
Yeah, I mean you're gonna need it tonight. You're gonna need to find a way to get to playoff Clayton Kershaw, who has just been historically awful in the playoffs, and it's crazy that this is his last season, man. I mean, this is it for Kersh. I mean, do we agree that he is the best pitcher of our generation? I mean, I don't know who else you would say.
Again, the postseason results haven't been there necessarily, but in terms of the numbers, if he's not one of one, he's definitely in the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like you'd have to go back through and all the guys that we've seen over the years currently pitching that have retired in the past handful of years to make the argument, but he's definitely up there for sure.
No, yeah, he's one of one. So we'll see what happens, but again, the Dodgers have the advantage right now, going back home to Chavez Ravine, and you got Kersh going tonight, and we'll see what happens for the Dodgers moving forward.
Tonight you also get Thursday night football. Divisional matchup in the AFC North between the Steelers and the Bengals. Have you heard the nickname they've given this game?
What is the nickname they've given it?
The Icy Hot Bowl.
The Icy Hot Bowl.
Because you've got 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers on one side. And how old's Flacco? Is he like 38, 39?
I think he's probably
is he 40?
42.
Okay, either way, you got two of the older quarterbacks. They might be the two oldest quarterbacks in the league as of right now.
I mean, who else is pushing 40?
I guess nobody. So you have the two oldest quarterbacks in the league taking each other on. And look, the Bengals are a disaster. Ever since they lost Joe Burrow, we knew their defense was going to be a struggle. They're bad on all counts. And the Steelers, again, I can't think of a team in a better position than the Steelers as they watch their entire division just crumble around them. Again, the only formidable adversary was going to be the Ravens, and they're injured. And obviously, I don't think they can claw themselves out of a 1-5 hole at this point. So Steelers kind of in cruise control right now.
For so many years, the AFC North has always been that tough division, that tough, hard-nosed football division with three pretty good teams.
Usually three.
Three pretty good teams, and then the Browns. And, yeah, man, it's just, again, I think this would be different if Joe Burrow didn't get hurt. Because you got to remember, the Bengals were off to a 2-0 start before he ended up getting hurt in that second game of the season. And, I mean, look, I think we could safely say the Bengals are nothing without Joe Burrow. I mean, he's just one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. And it sucks when a guy gets hurt. Lamar Jackson's also been banged up, and the Ravens have just been, quite frankly, awful this year. But having Lamar out there would have been helpful, and then the Browns are the Browns. So this division, I think the Steelers are probably going to run away with it, to be honest, just because of how bad Baltimore's been. And then, I mean, Joe Burrow isn't coming back anytime soon. So, I mean, the Steelers would really have to fumble this thing away, quite literally, to lose this division.
Yeah, I think they'll be just fine. So that's what's on your docket tonight. In terms of sports viewing, of course, we're focused on South Carolina and Oklahoma coming up this week. And last night, we got the availability report of the first one of the week, which we'll dive into in just a second. But first, it's time for our 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up.
Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm. Sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803 all nines. Again, last night we got our first availability report of the week. We'll get one again tonight, tomorrow night, and then 90 minutes for kickoff on Saturday to see who is available and who is going to be out. And to no surprise, a lot of the same names we saw from last week's availability report showing up once again this week for South Carolina. Doubtful includes Nolan Hay, Casey Henry, and Shed Surratt, who got injured last week in that game against LSU. Marquis Anderson has moved questionable. He joins Gabriel Dindy, and then Brandon Cisse listed as probable after he suffered that injury last week against LSU as well.
So that's a good sign, having Brandon Cisse be probable, because he took a nasty hit and was down for
a little bit of friendly fire.
Yeah, he was down for like 5 minutes on the field, just laying there, and I thought it was like going to be like something like really, really bad, which Of course, it wasn't great since he was in a cast wrapped around his leg or whatever. But having him be probable, it's a good sign. You need him out there. He's probably been one of your top, if not the top defender for South Carolina this season. Now, offensively, adding another starting offensive lineman to the list of guys that are hurt, not good at all. You would like to hope that all three of those guys can play this weekend, but again, the fact they're listed as doubtful right now, it's not impossible. We've seen guys listed as doubtful before this season move all the way up to being available by Saturday, so we still got some time this week, but it's not a good sign, all things considered right now.
Well, again, you're already thin enough on the offensive line. You're making this change with now, Sean Elliott taking over there, and I do worry about the fact that you just don't have all of your options on the table. And look, this entire offensive line has struggled this year, but Case Henry has without a doubt been the best guy so far this year at right tackle, which is obviously a very important job on that offensive line. So you're without him, and Tree's done fine. Obviously, Thompson on the other side has been a concern. You look at a guy like Nolan Hay, who's been one of your options at center so far this year, because Rodney Newsom and Boaz Stanley both had their respective amount of problems last week against LSU. I just don't know what option you trot out there with your starting five this weekend is going to give you the best opportunity against, as we talked about, a nasty, tenacious defense in Oklahoma.
Now, you hope you can get Marquis Anderson back because you need another body in there for sure. And I just don't know what this starting five would look like, Tyler. Like you said, I mean, it would probably be what right now? Josiah Thompson at left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Let's leave left guard blank for a second. We'll fill it up in a minute.
Okay.
Center.
Is it Boaz? Do you like?
I mean, what other option? I mean, you're going to go back to? You could go back to Rodney Newsom, but again, he was pulled so early in that LSU game because of that mistake he made.
Well, and we didn't really even talk about this much, but he had the fumble or the bad exchange on the first drive where he didn't know the snap count, and then the second drive he almost snapped it over Lenore Seller's head. Like that didn't get talked about as much, but that was like
about enough.
The first two snaps he had were both pretty bad, and that's why they made the move to Boaz, which again, Boaz was your starting center, got replaced by Nolan Hay, who's been hurt. Rodney Newsom goes in there, so like you're cycling back to your first option, which didn't work out to begin with, if you're going to go with Boaz, and I really don't think. And we only saw a little bit of Nolan Hay, right? So we didn't get a full experience of like, okay, here's what this guy can do for an entire game. So I don't really think there's any good option at center right now.
No, there's not. Boaz has not been anywhere near what you expected out of him. He's supposed to be a really good player. I mean, this is a guy that did not allow much pressure at all last year when he was at Troy coming here to South Carolina. And I know it's completely different from the SEC and the Sun Belt, but still, I mean, you thought you were getting something better than what you are. So let's say Boaz at center right now, right? Because, I mean, What other options do you really have? Right guard, Tro, and then right tackle, Tree. Okay.
I guess so. I mean, you could make the case for Jatavius Shivers as well.
I think he needs to get more reps, honestly. And he deserves more opportunity. But can he play guard, though? I mean, he's more of a tackle guy, isn't he?
Yeah, tackle mainly because they've used him out even sometimes like that extra tackle lining him up like a tight end. So he's an option. And again, Tree's done fine, which I think that's okay. But you have an option there if you want to make a change, if you really wanted to.
So then who fills left guard? If Shed cannot be out there,
who are we down to now?
I mean, do you slide? Here's what you could do because you did it against Missouri. Do you slide Boaz to guard and then put Rodney at center?
Maybe.
I mean, now let's say if Marquis Anderson's healthy, I think you put him at left guard, right?
Yeah, that'd probably be your best option. And again, it sounds like he's trending towards being able to play. But of course, you always have to have the caveat of, well, what if he's not available to play?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and look, the good thing about this offensive line is guys can play multiple positions on the line, which is good. But
can they play them well?
Yeah, can they play them well? And are they going to have the right bodies to go out there and be on the starting offensive line.
So last week you had Nick Sharp that came in.
Oh, and Nick Sharp. Nick Sharp, good point.
After Shed, so I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah,
I had to look it up to make sure. But that's, I guess, if Shed's not going to be able to play and Markey can't play, that's probably your option there. Again, I hate that we're having to go so far down this list because you're not making your offensive line any better. But you got to roll a group of 5 out there some kind of way, and I don't know. We'll see, but it will continue to be an area of concern until proven otherwise.
Yes, need to figure it out, and hopefully Sean Elliott can make those adjustments on the fly here.
We'll certainly see. This is obviously a huge game for South Carolina, but also a pretty big game for Oklahoma as well when you kind of look at what they've done in the back half of the season under Brent Venables. We'll dive into some of those numbers coming up next as we continue on with the Extra Point. Sorry, and Jack Beltry with you on your Thursday on the Game.
Good afternoon. Hope you guys are doing great. Brand new week here for us. We're excited, obviously, for a tradition-rich program like Oklahoma coming into town. Obviously, our weekly routine is really always starts with us. Meaning just starting with the coaching staff or just motivating, getting our guys trying to be a positive influence on everybody around the building. I think most importantly, trying to get their focus as the week goes on, increase their readiness to play. And obviously, it starts with their style of play with their offensive coordinator, Coach Arbuckle, and obviously their quarterback, Mateer. I think they do a really good job. Their running backs are really athletic tight end, big O-line. So excited to get this thing going on NC State Fair Week. I'm at the South Carolina State Fair Week.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Points Hour, and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Thursday on the game. That was Clayton White yesterday talking to the media, giving his scouting report of the Oklahoma Sooners ahead of Saturday's game. I always love his intro where, hey, how you guys doing? Hope you're doing well. And then kind of dives into his thing. It's always nice to hear.
He's preparing to, for that eventual head coaching job at some point, right?
I guess.
That's always how he's done it for years. So, look, Clayton is like the next best thing for, in terms of being a head coach. He's going to get a job there, as a head coach eventually, I think. He's done such a great job with this defense so far this year with the takeaways they've had and picking up kind of where they left off last year. Again, it was always going to be tricky to replace the guys that you lost, and it hasn't been perfect this season, right? You've had some moments where it's like the missed tackles and giving up a lot of points to Vanderbilt and Missouri, and it's can this defense be pretty good? But they've stepped it up the last 2 games, I would say, for sure.
They have, and they've done a solid job keeping Carolina in these last couple games, even though Carolina's not been able to win the majority of them. And it's really interesting because I feel like there's a lot riding on this game, right? Obviously, Carolina's trying to keep their hopes alive in terms of making a bowl game and all that kind of stuff. But I really think fan interest is also hanging on the line this weekend as well. And we talked about this yesterday or the day before, whenever it was, about 3-3 from a year ago to 3-3 now. And there feels like a big difference. Last year's 3-3 felt like you were trending in the right direction. You were on the cusp of breaking through and making great things happen, which you obviously did in terms of winning the final 6 games of the regular season, end up 9-3. This year doesn't feel that way. This year feels like, you're just kind of limping at 3-3, and quite frankly, you're lucky to be at that point, right? And none of your wins are looked at as quality wins. You have a win over Virginia Tech, who's fired their coach, a win over SC State, who's an FCS team, and a win over Kentucky that's legitimately the worst team in the SEC and probably one of the worst teams in all of Power 4. So you don't have anything to really hang your hat on, compared to where you were at a year ago in some regards, sitting at 3-3. So I think a lot of people are still hopeful, but if you lose this game to Oklahoma this weekend and drop to 3-4, considering what you have coming up with Alabama, Ole Miss, and A&M in just the next 3 games alone, I think this is the game, or after this game, is where a lot of people might check out.
This is the game that they need so badly. Now, let's go back to 2 years ago, right?
Sure.
Feels like everything just intertwines between 2023 and 25. There's so many similarities. That team was way worse than this team, I would say.
Yep.
They were 2-6 at this time last year, or 2 years ago. I'm trying to remember. Do we remember what? I don't think I was on radio here at the time. How bad was fan interest, 2 years ago?
It pretty much not completely died off, but it got to the point where we just weren't getting a lot of interaction, right? Because, they went through the month of October without winning a single game. And, they blew that game against Florida. I think after the Florida game was probably where things kind of died off a little bit because people were upset. How do you blow a 10-point lead? How do you, the 4th downs and all that kind of stuff? And there was a lot of anger that Monday. But if I remember correctly, it was after that when it was just kind of more apathetic than anything else. People can only get so excited about wins against Kentucky and Jacksonville State. And there was a little juice to the Clemson game because of the rivalry and the fact that you had the opportunity to get to a bowl game if you were able to win that game. And obviously ended up coming up short there. But, yeah, I've seen it firsthand just how much the interest can wane when you get to the point where people think the season's kind of lost.
And I've seen it firsthand with men's basketball and baseball and back-to-back.
God, we've had to live both realities this year already.
I know. So maybe this is just the year of bad men's sports in general. But football's still got time to get this thing right, and I think they are going to get the win this weekend. Again, it's just they need this so badly. Like, a lot does hinge on this game. Like, if you lose this game, I think it's going to be hard to beat Alabama. I think it's going to be hard to go to Ole Miss, and I think it's going to be hard to go to A&M and come away with wins in any of those games. Then you're looking at, okay, like, are they even going to get to a bowl game? You have to be able to win this game this weekend to keep that bowl hope alive for sure.
Well, this is an interesting point in the season because both South Carolina and Oklahoma start the back half of their schedules. Both teams have played 6 games so far. Oklahoma's 5-1, South Carolina's 3-3. Obviously, as we know, Beamer teams get better as the season goes along. In his prior 4 years, they are a combined 16-8 in the final 6 games of the regular season. Brent Venables, in his 3 seasons at Oklahoma, they're 9-9. So Beamer's teams get better, Venables teams get worse. Now, again, this is just one game that we're talking about, but this always does kind of seem to be a pivot point for both these programs that hopefully plays in Carolina's favor this weekend.
It's crazy because everyone talks about Cocktober and stuff, but Carolina is...
It's really Cockvember.
It really is. Carolina has not been that good in the month of October. Like, again, 23 was a disaster in that month. Cocktober shouldn't even be a thing at this point. I don't like when the national people say it.
It's fun to say, that's why.
It's fun, but they aren't that good in October. It's always been November. Everyone knows that South Carolina is better in November. What do they say, or what does Beamer say? They always remember
November.
Remember November.
I last year when they stormed the field against A&M, which I believe was the first game of November last year, I took a video of it and tweeted it out, and I said, tell your children about November Beamer. That's a thing, right?
It is a thing.
Now, here's the thing. You've got to get to November with still something to play for, because if you lose this game, you lose to Alabama, and, well, I guess the Ole Miss game would technically be on November 1st, but, like, you don't need to go into November sitting at 2-5, right? You need to have, or 3-5, sorry. You need to have, because then you'd be saying, okay, now you got to find a way to win 3 of your last 4 games, 2 of those being on the road against Ole Miss and A&M, and quite frankly, I don't see that happening.
No. The one thing you can count on is death, taxes, and Shane Beamer's teams playing good football in November. That has always been a fact over the first 4 years of his tenure. Will that be the case in the 5th year? I mean, you're going to have the back end is much easier than the front end of the month, but it all starts with this weekend. And this feels like the most winnable of any game in the 5-game stretch that you have here. It really does.
There's a lot of things about Oklahoma, and I've listened to some podcasts and been perusing some of their websites like Sooner Scoop this week, and they're extremely down on this offense, which we'll get into specifically a little bit more in a moment. But it almost kind of reminds me a lot of last year where their offense was god-awful, that Carolina obviously took advantage of in that mauling out there in Norman, but the defense was good, and this defense is better this year. But it's very funny how it's similar type of vibes going into this game. Like, man, I worry about the offense, but the defense is going to be fine.
Yeah, I mean, this is Carolina's opportunity to really strike. And that Texas game, I think it came at the right time just because Texas kind of, again, we said it this week, they laid the blueprint out for how you go ahead and beat this Oklahoma team with a banged-up quarterback and having a really good defense to match what OU's defense can do.
So where can South Carolina find its advantages when taking on Oklahoma this weekend? We'll dive into that coming up next as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri here on your Thursday on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher with you on your Thursday here on The Game, getting you set for South Carolina and Oklahoma coming up on Saturday. Early kick, 12:45. Finally get a non-night game at Williams-Brice Stadium. Gamecocks game day will begin that morning at 7:30 with myself and Elijah Campbell live from Jay's Corner at the corner of Rosewood and Bluff. Then again, kick is at 12:45. Obviously, the biggest story of Oklahoma the past couple weeks is revolved around their quarterback, John Mateer, who had a less than stellar performance in his return from injury last week in the Red River Shootout against Texas. Their coach, Brent Venables, was asked earlier on this week about the guys around Mateer helping him out on offense.
I'm certainly not going to lay it out there for you, but you're always looking for ways to help guys. So I'm not going to get into what that exactly means, but and again, John, he told you himself he feels like he needed to make a few better decisions and be a little more patient, let the game come to him, and he's anxious and amped up, and like everybody was, and probably pressed a little bit. But you play quarterback at a high level when everybody around you is playing at a high level as well. We need to get better. We need to improve. Everybody around them needs to be a little more efficient with what they're doing, fundamentally, physically, technically, all of those things. Mm-hmm.
And it was very clear watching last week's game, and I went back and watched about a half of it again yesterday. It was not the same John Mateer that we saw through the first 4 games that he was able to play prior to his injury. And, you say, okay, what's the effect of the hand surgery that he had? What's the effect of the team that he was playing in Texas, who does have a good defense? Like, trying to figure out what exactly John Mateer is and what version of him we're going to get to see this weekend.
It's going to be interesting because it's not like the hand is going to be 100% better than it was against Texas. It obviously had some effect on some of the throws he made and stuff and some of the decision making. And look, Texas also is a very good defense. I mean, they did a great job having a game plan for Mateer. Again, they forced 3 interceptions and had 5 sacks. Those were both numbers that Mateer hasn't even sniffed this year. I mean, and think about it this way, Tyler. OU's O-line has done a great job of protecting him this year.
Mm-hmm.
Through the first 4 games that Mateer played in, he was only sacked 4 times, once every single game. He also only threw 3 interceptions in those first 4 games. So, I mean, he put up numbers against Texas that he hadn't put up all year. Even his completion percentage was way down. I mean, he only completed 52% of his passes, which was significantly lower than anything he's done all year. So, and he also wasn't effective in the ground game either.
Mm-hmm.
So, point being, Texas did a very good job being ready for everything he was going to bring to the table, and also knowing he's not 100%, even if he says he is out there.
And it's interesting to point out as well, one thing that he was doing really well early on in the season was throwing the ball downfield. Prior to the Texas game, he was 10 of 19 on throws of 20 yards or more with 2 touchdowns. Saturday, 0 for 4 with 2 of those interceptions coming on those longer throws. And some of those throws down the field were just egregiously bad. I don't know who, again, watching some of the tape from yesterday, I don't know who the heck he was throwing to on some of those. Like, there wasn't even receivers in the frame of the TV for one of the ones that he chucked down the field on Saturday against Texas. So it's like, okay, and he's not on the availability report. He's been practicing this week, so he's going to be the starting quarterback, but like, how good's he going to be? Again, I think a couple weeks ago we looked at this and said, oh man, you're talking about maybe the Heisman Trophy favorite in John Mateer rolling into Williams-Brice Stadium in a couple weeks. Now it's like, you have to really ask the question of like, could you actually see Michael Hawkins Jr. at some point in this game if John Mateer starts out bad again?
I think you almost have to be ready for it. I think if you're South Carolina, you definitely prepare like he's going to be in there at some point. I also wonder, like, do they have would they have certain packages for Hawkins to come in? But it's easier if Mateer isn't playing well, right? If Mateer's not playing well, I mean, you don't want to bench this guy since you paid him a lot of money to come here, but he's obviously hurt. I mean, that's the fact. Like, it felt crazy that you could have surgery and come back in less than 3 weeks. I mean, it felt like they rushed it, or he rushed it a lot. and it obviously affected his play on the field. And it may hurt It may cost Oklahoma's season if they have another bad game here. So if you're Brent Venables, you kind of have to look at it like, look, we love Mateer, but if he's hurting us with another poor performance, might need to pull the plug and have Hawkins come in just at least until Mateer gets healthy enough.
Well, and I know everybody will think, oh, great, Mike Hawkins Jr., we teed off on him last year. Let's remember, he had no help around him on offense. That offensive line was terrible. All of his receivers were hurt. I don't think you can take the Michael Hawkins Jr. from last year's matchup against South Carolina and think it's going to be the exact same, because I do think he's going to have more to work with around him if he does end up playing this upcoming weekend. And again, I don't know if we're going to see him or not, but given the struggles of Mateer last week, if he comes out of the gate and he looks the same as he did against Texas, I wouldn't put it past Brent Venables to want to make a change.
Yeah, I mean, totally, especially with the way Hawkins played when he filled in during Mateer's absence. And again, he was doing it against Kent State, an opponent like that. But still, I mean, this is a different Oklahoma team this year. They're just as good defensively. I think they're a little bit better offensively. Look, Oklahoma also needs to figure out how they're going to run the football.
Which
right?
they can't. They've not been able to do that effectively all season.
Jaden Ott has not lived up to any of the hype that he had transferring from California to Oklahoma. I mean, look, that's a good – you're getting Oklahoma at just about the perfect time with your South Carolina. A banged-up quarterback, and it's a team that's coming off a real bad loss against Texas where you only score 6 points in that game. I mean, you've got them right where you want them. Come into Willie B for the first time. It's going to be a loud atmosphere, hopefully. And I haven't seen South Carolina announce a sellout yet, so maybe that'll change here in the next few days. But this is a huge game for South Carolina, and I think they got Oklahoma coming in at the right time to make some noise.
Yeah, they've definitely struggled running the football. You mentioned Jaden Ott, who had a 1,300-yard season a couple years ago at Cal, was obviously a hot commodity in the transfer portal this offseason, and somebody that Texas was really excited about, and he's just done all of nothing so far this year. Their only decent runner is Torrey Blaylock, who did have 100 yards earlier on this year in one of their games. That was against Temple, which make of that what you will. But when you look at his numbers against quality competition, 9 carries, 24 yards against Michigan, 11 carries, 13 yards against Auburn, 11 carries, 33 yards against Texas. He's not done anything against a quality defense at all this year, and I don't think that Oklahoma's going to be able to rely on this run game coming up on Saturday as well. Now, that being said, we said similar things about LSU's run game, and they actually finally had a breakout performance against South Carolina's defense, so you hope that's not the case once again this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you're really hoping you can come out, play fast in this game, get your offense going. I mean, you just need to play a clean game in all three phases. Limit the penalties, limit the silly mistakes that you've made over and over again, and let Lenoris do his thing out there. Give him some more time.
I will say this. Well, look, we know how good this defense is, and Brent Venables is one of the best defensive minds in all of college football, and the results speak for themselves. And as Beamer alluded to earlier on this week, they're just about top of every category nationally you can think of defensively. However, in watching the Texas game and go back and looking at some of the numbers, there is something that they're struggling with. That is missing tackles. In their 3 games against what we deem to be quality competition in Michigan, Auburn, and Texas, they missed 11 tackles against Michigan, 15 tackles against Auburn, and 10 tackles last week against Texas. They're having trouble tackling guys when they face good competition. That is something South Carolina could exploit on Saturday.
Have to be able to. You run the football well in this game like you have the last few weeks, that sets you up to do a lot more offensively in this game. Again, I got a real good feeling about this game. I do think it is low scoring, but I think South Carolina can get the job done. It's just that funny feeling of every year they have one of those games where they just show up and have the best game of the year and they shock an opponent. I think this is probably that week.
And again, I think for the hope of this fan base, you need to do it because, again, I think a lot of people will say, all right, you're 3-4. You got Alabama coming in next week. I don't know how much interest I'm going to have in this going forward because it seems like the ship is starting to sink a little bit, at least for this season specifically. So, yeah, this is definitely the most gettable of the next handful of games that you have against ranked top competition, but saying it and doing it are obviously two very different things.
They are. I mean, you're going to have to go out there and play a good football game. And fans are going to be expecting improvements made with Sean Elliott stepping in as the offensive line coach. Like, they are going to be hoping that the penalties are down and the blocking is better. And if those things are, then it's a job well done. But if not, you're going to have a lot of people really frustrated and more concerned than anything.
So Oklahoma's coming in here as the number 14 team in the country, sitting at 5-1. And I had an interesting thought yesterday. Is Oklahoma living the reality of what South Carolina was supposed to be? We'll dive into that coming up next to wrap up hour number one. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry. By the way, your next chance to win $1,000 coming up here in just a second in our national cash contest. Be listening out and be ready to text the keyword to 95819 in our national cash contest. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry here on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. It's our Ed and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Thursday on the game. Coming up in the next hour, Wes Mitchell had a conversation with George Stoia of Soonerscoop.com for their podcast the other day, and we're going to let you hear some of that conversation coming up the next hour as we get a little bit more insight from behind the scenes when it comes to the Oklahoma Sooners ahead of Saturday's matchup here in Williams-Brice Stadium. But Jack, I had a thought, and I want to get your thought on this. Is Oklahoma, where they're at right now, as I mentioned, 5-1, number 14 team in the country, are they living the reality of what we thought Carolina was going to be at this point through 6 games?
I would say probably. I think we expected South Carolina coming into the year, at least I did, coming into the year, being 5-0 through the first 5 weeks of the year, losing to LSU, and then you get this game coming up. This was supposed to be South Carolina, but it has not been.
And in the same way, is Carolina living the reality of what we thought Oklahoma was going to be? Because remember, Brent Venables was one of the many coaches that came into this year in that hot seat conversation because he had the 10-3 year back in 2023, but the other 2 seasons on either end of that had been 500 and underwhelming at Oklahoma. And look, Oklahoma has a high bar of expectations when it comes to the history of that program. And, you know, the word was, hey, if Brent Venables can't get this thing kicked into gear in year number 2 in the SEC, maybe they look to make a change. Now, he's obviously done a really good job of getting them out of that hole, and they're in good position with all their goals still in front of them. But I can't help but think that them being 3-3, them being out of the mix of the college football playoff and all that kind of stuff was where I think a lot of people thought they might be at this point in the year.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think coming after last year, I mean, last year was just an embarrassment for what Oklahoma stands for, what the kind of program they are. I mean, losing the games that they did, getting blown out by South Carolina, ending the year with a loss to, who was it, Navy?
In the bowl game, yeah.
In the Armed Forces Bowl. I mean, just bad, man. And so, look, they made improvements. I think Oklahoma did the right thing in moving on from both coordinators, letting Brent Venables take over calling plays for the defense. That was probably the biggest change, that if Oklahoma has success the rest of this year and gets to the playoff, that's the change you look back on like, that's the one that helped us get to where we are. You obviously add John Mateer. You added Jay Knott. I mean, you thought he was going to be more. You get some of these receivers back. I mean, and the defense, obviously. We know what they are. So this is coming into the year, you knew this was going to be a better football team than last year. They had to be. Otherwise, Brent Venables is looking at his job as being completely on the line.
Yeah, and look, last week against Texas, well, obviously didn't go the way that they wanted it to, and we'll see how much that was due to John Mateer and the status of him coming back from his injury and all that kind of stuff. But all their goals are still ahead of them, right? They're a team that theoretically, if they run the table at 11-1, considering the fact that I don't know if Texas is going to, get through without any more losses, then they're still in position to make the SEC championship game, make the playoff, and all that kind of stuff, which is why this game is so important to them, and one that, from their standpoint, they hope that that Texas does not beat them twice. And again, that's an emotional rivalry game that's always going to be tough and always going to be physical. And, I guess the question is, what kind of hangover do they have coming in here off the heels of that loss?
I mean, even if they had won that game against Texas, you knew there was going to be some sort of hangover. There will probably be less of a hangover now that they lost that game, and they got their butt kicked in that game. And it's a reality check for Oklahoma now, to where it's like, hey, if we want to get to the college football playoff, you can't be having these types of losses coming up here, because the schedule for everyone in the SEC is tough, but OU's got it tough as well over these next few weeks. And a trip to South Carolina right after losing to Texas, it puts you into a corner where, it's gut check time. It's time to go out here and backs up against the wall. Not everyone thinks you can win this game. Everyone's doubting you now, thinking, oh, this is Oklahoma of last year again. You got to go out here and win this game for sure.
For what it's worth, we know that Carolina typically plays its best, not only in the back half of the season, but when people really doubt them, when people get really down on this team for whatever reason, they always find a way to go out there and put their best performance on. And again, you need to do that this weekend, because I think the opinion of this team, I guess with the lack of a better term, is riding on what happens on Saturday. Because again, if you're dropped 3-4 with what you have coming up, I think a lot of people say, all right, the offseason was fun, the hype was fun, but this team ain't it. Talk to me next year, wins basketball, right?
Yeah, wins basketball.
Hopefully that goes better than it did a year ago.
Yeah, hopefully. So, again, you got a lot riding on this game for both teams, honestly. For South Carolina, they wish they were in a better spot, but this is a game that can almost save their season in a lot of ways. And it's the same thing for Oklahoma, except OU has higher expectations right now than the Gamecocks do, who are just trying to stay afloat and get to a bowl game.
Again, Wes Mitchell talked with George Stoya of Soonerscoop.com yesterday. We'll let you hear that conversation. Coming up next in hour number 2 is again the Garnet Trust Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating, here on your Thursday on The Game. Welcome back in. It's now the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. It's all right, Jack Veltri along with you here on your Thursday on the game. Again, we're getting you set for South Carolina and Oklahoma coming up on Saturday over at Williams-Brice Stadium. Kickoff at 12:45. Sooner Scoop is the On3 affiliate for the University of Oklahoma. And earlier on this week, yesterday specifically, our guy Wes Mitchell did speak with George Stoia, who's one of the writers who've had him on the show before, to get a little bit more insight into this Oklahoma team ahead of Saturday's matchup. And we'll dive into that conversation now. Here is Wes Mitchell and George Stoia.
All right, guys, welcome back in. Like I said, joined now by our special guest on today's podcast from Soonerscoop.com. It is friend of the show, George Stoia III. George, I appreciate you hopping on, man. Hope you're doing well today. How's everything going out in Oklahoma?
Everything's pretty good. I think that the fan base is certainly not happy anytime you lose to your arch rival Texas, especially the fashion that they did. People are not happy, so I think everybody's looking forward to seeing if this Oklahoma team can bounce back this week in Columbia.
Yeah, and let's keep it right there first, George. Kind of a vibe check. I always like to get a feel for where the fan bases are, and I know you just hit on it a little bit, but how have the kind of readers and posters on you guys' message board sort of been, I guess in terms of like, I feel like for the most part, if you zoom out, this season has been a step forward, at least from what we saw last year. It was interesting to me. Oklahoma was a team, even with last year's season, they were already kind of being picked by a lot of national folks like, hey, this is a team that's going to take a big step forward this year. This is a team that's added a difference maker at quarterback. The season starts the way you want. Then you kind of just hit this massive hurdle last week, maybe a little unexpected, the loss to Texas. How are they taking that loss in terms of like the greater expectations for this season when it started?
I think it depends on who you ask, because I think there's definitely a group of fans out there, a lot of them over on Soonerscoop.com, that want everybody fired for losing to Texas, especially the way they lost that game and on offense, not being able to move the ball. The end of first half game management from Brent Venables was terrible and something that we've seen at times throughout his tenure. But you're right. In a lot of ways, Oklahoma has shown some improvement. Beating Michigan at home again. I don't know how good Michigan is, but still, that's a nice win, and they kind of won that game handily. Beating Auburn at home, and that game was tight, but the way that you did it, where you went down and you scored a late touchdown, and then you got the stop at the end of the game, those are things that, honestly, we didn't see a year ago, and we haven't seen at times during the Brent Venables era. So I think everybody was feeling really good heading into the Cotton Bowl, and I can tell you, OU and its fans all felt very confident that they could beat Texas, especially with the way that Texas had been playing. It felt like a big missed opportunity. And, you look at some of the deficiencies on the offensive side of the ball and not being able to run, and obviously the John Mateer situation. And that's the part where you take a step back and you say, okay, they're sitting at 5-1. Yes, the schedule's extremely difficult, but if they can just get to 9-3, then maybe they can be in that playoff conversation and get in. And I don't know if they can get there. South Carolina's probably the easiest team they still have left in their schedule. Maybe LSU is in that same argument because I'm not much of a believer in LSU. Missouri, they get Missouri at home, Ole Miss at home, but it's a brutal schedule, man. They got to go to Tennessee, to Alabama, obviously South Carolina this week. And so I think everybody kind of says, man, they just played so bad and the schedule's daunting. But when you do take a step back, I do think there's been a lot of improvement. Now it's, can they overcome what was honestly a really bad loss this past week and where they kind of got exposed?
Yeah, and George, I think we're seeing, especially in the SEC, maybe college football from a greater standpoint, becoming a little bit more like the NFL, where you're not going undefeated. Like really, I cover a South Carolina team that was 9-3 last year, just barely missed the playoff. You look at a lot of the conversation around college athletics, around the SEC this offseason, it feels to me like a 9-3 SEC team is going to get in. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of context based on everybody else, but I would say a good shot, at least, that a 9-3, if not this year, at some point is going to get in. So I think certainly that's something for Oklahoma to aim for. Let's talk about Mateer. When I've seen like spurts of him, I've seen clips of him. Obviously, he hits the ground running, just an incredible start to the season. For somebody who gets to watch him on a week-to-week basis, What stands out about John Mateer? And then, of course, can you give us a health update on where things are going into this game?
He's a playmaker. I think that's one thing that you've seen from him. His best moments, he's scrambling or getting out of the pocket and either running with the ball, which we saw a lot against Michigan. I mean, he was their leading rusher in that game, and a big reason why they won is the way that he ran the football. And then he's also been able to make some big passes down the field. And he really knows this offense in and out. And that's why this past week was really strange. He made some really bad decisions. There was guys open, and he just didn't see them, or he overthrew them, or he was a half second behind. And a lot of that I would attribute to he hadn't practiced in 3 weeks. He tried to rush back, obviously, from the hand injury and, came back 17 days after having surgery. Didn't really practice leading up to the game. I think he maybe only practiced one day, was cleared on Thursday, and obviously did some of the walkthrough stuff. And he'll tell you, and he said it in the media, that, that's not an excuse, and, that he, got enough reps and all of that leading in. He just didn't play well. But I think we all know if you don't practice, and especially going up against a good team like Texas, you're not going to play well. And that's what you saw. And I think that that's why this week is so big. He's told us that he's full go. Brent Venables said he's full go. He didn't re-injure it in the Texas game. So it sounds like he's going to be practicing a lot more. Again, is it 100%? Is he getting every single rep in practice? I don't know, but I think it's a lot more than what he had a week ago. And so you're hopeful that he can bounce back and look like that player that he was early in the season. And the biggest thing, Wes, is what we've seen from this Oklahoma offense is John Mateer makes the whole thing go. If he's not on, they really don't have a whole lot because they can't turn around and hand the ball off and run the football. They've been really bad at running. They have pass protected extremely well. This offensive line has been one of the better pass protecting units in the country, but they haven't really found anything in the run game. So you're forcing John Mateer to make stuff happen through the air. And we saw that last week. That just was not a recipe for success, especially with a guy who's coming off a broken hand, hasn't practiced. And so they really need to get him going and get back to what he was really good at early in the year, which was making a lot of plays. And again, he needs to be healthy. And it sounds like he's only going to get healthier as the season goes on.
How did you frame up the thought of, okay, everything's so professionalized in college athletics right now. I appreciate a guy that says, you know what, I feel like I can go, so I'm going to go. Like, this is OU Texas. This is a rivalry game. I'm the leader of this program. I'm going to go play, versus then you kind of see how he actually played. The level of play, clearly, as you said, was not to what we've seen from Mateer the rest of the year. How do you kind of frame up, like, he was not himself and able to go do what he needed to do to win the game, while also acknowledging, like, this is what I want from my leader. Like, this is what I want from a guy who's going to go out there and lead the program by example.
Yeah, look, John's the ultra competitor, right? I mean, he's a guy that he's not going to miss. And he was telling everybody, it was funny. I mean, around here, he was running into people at Chipotle, and people would ask him, hey, are you playing against Texas? And it's like, he's like, yeah, I'm playing. And so I think we all knew if he could throw the football in any regard, he was going to play. And I think from Oklahoma's perspective, they were like, he gives us the best chance to win. And, we saw what Michael Hawkins did against Kent State. It just wasn't a whole lot for OU. And last year he was the starting quarterback there for a time period. I mean, he started against South Carolina, and they were up 21-0 in the blink of an eye. And so I think that they just knew in a game like this, if they could get Mateer, to play, that he was their best option. And I think that he also kind of lights a fire in the team. I think guys were super excited that he was going to get to play. And you saw it early in the game. OU was moving the ball. They were able to complete a lot of passes. Mateer looked really sharp, especially with some of the scripted stuff early in the game. I mean, their first couple drives, they were able to move the ball up and down the field. And that was largely because of John Mateer. And then it just kind of, as the game went on, he really struggled. And so I think that it was one of those things that the team really rallied around him. And it's one of those things we're hearing this week too, Wes, is the team, despite the way John played, they're still very confident in him. The players really appreciate his toughness and wanting to play in that game this past week. And obviously this week as well, moving forward, there was a lot of people that thought when he first injured this, he wasn't going to be back by the South Carolina game. It was going to maybe be the Ole Miss game. So the fact that he's playing, I think that the team really appreciates that, and they're hopeful, and I think they have a lot of confidence that he won't play as poorly as he did on Saturday again this week.
There's some of the conversation Wes Mitchell was having with George Stoia of Soonerscoop.com. We'll let you hear the rest of that conversation coming up on the other side. But a quick reminder today, the post-game show going to be live at US Brick at 300 Hugie Street, out there from 3 until 6. Then tomorrow, big Friday tailgate shows. They're hanging out at Krager Showrooms on Gadsden Street over in the Vista, the place formerly known as The Nest, where you can go by and hang out with them from 3 until 6 once again. Enjoy some delicious food thanks to Coyote Grills, as well as some Savage craft beer as well. Again, that's tomorrow from 3 until 6 over at Krager Showrooms on Gadsden Street. Today from 3 until 6 out at US Brick at 300 Hugie Street. More of Wes Mitchell's conversation with George Stoia of Sooner Scoop coming up next as the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating rolls along on your Thursday on The Game.
If you are looking for a reliable local roofing company to help your home or business with your roofing needs, check out our friends at Classic Roofing. Joe Reeder, Max Sawyer, our guys, friends of the program here. They can help you take good care of your roof. That can be challenging, but you don't have to do it alone. They have years of expertise under their hats. They're a local company. Again, their families live right here in the Midlands. And the guys at Classic Roofing are GAF certified roofers. Only about 7% of roofers nationwide even have that certification. They can do inspections, installations, replacements, and repairs on your roof. You can visualize your new roof and what it would look like at classicroofingsc.com. You can check out their reviews and get a free estimate there. classicroofingsc.com, or give them a call, 803-590-7870. That's the reliable roofers over at Classic Roofing.
Welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head, Jack Beltry along with you here on your Thursday on the game. We'll get back into Wes Mitchell's conversation with George Stoia of Soonerscoop.com as he's helping provide us a little bit more insight into South Carolina's opponent this upcoming weekend, the number 14 Oklahoma Sooners.
Let's talk defense a little bit. Gamecock fans very familiar with what Brent Venables can cook up on that side of the ball. We saw it for what felt like 100 years, South Carolina going up against Clemson. And when I think of Venables' defenses, I think of just havoc. I think of the fact that it's going to look like Beamer talked about this a little bit this week in his press conference. It's going to look like they're throwing a million things at you. Now, they may have it sort of structured on their end where it's not as complicated for the players and for the Oklahoma guys. But from your perspective, you're going, we got to be ready for 100 different looks. What have you seen from this defense? I know they're really good defensively last year. Maybe that got overshadowed a little bit. But with Venables taking over it, kind of this year, George, what have been the differences? What have, just been your observations about this defense?
Well, I'll first tell you, the players would tell you it is very complicated. A lot of the guys have talked about that in the sense of learning this playbook is kind of insane. It's the biggest playbook that a lot of these guys have ever had in their careers and may ever have. So he does a lot of different stuff, whether it's stunts up front or disguising coverages on the back end, some stuff that maybe teams have never seen before. So he's really good at that. I think that him taking over the play calling duties has been really good. And they were really good a year ago, but they've taken this thing to another level. And I think a big reason why is not just him play calling, but they've got a lot of third and fourth year guys in this defense at all three levels. You look at the defensive line, and that's kind of where it starts is, they have guys in Grayson Halton and Dominic Williams, both seniors, guys that have been really good on the interior defensive line, as well as R. Mason Thomas. He's a game wrecker on the edge. As we all know, he was a preseason All-SEC type guy, and he's living up to it. This year, he's been phenomenal. Taylor Wine's a new guy. He's a third-year guy that's played extremely well. Marvin Jones Jr., who started his career at Georgia and then was at Florida State last year. He's transferred in. He's been really good on the edge too. David Stone and Jaden Jackson also on the interior. Those are the guys that really make this thing go. You mentioned havoc. Oklahoma leads the SEC in creating havoc plays up front. They get after the quarterback. I think they are like top 10 in the country in sacks and also tackles for loss. So they create a lot of negative plays that make offenses get behind the chains. And then in the secondary, that was kind of where the question mark was. I think they've been really good at safety. Peyton Bowen, a third-year player, has been really good this year. Robert Spears-Jennings is in his fourth year playing safety as well. They've got some young guys back there in Reggie Powers and Michael Boganowski in their second year that have played really well. And at corner, Gentry Williams, senior, he's played extremely well. He's been a starter for him in every game. Eli Bowen, he's back. He was a freshman All-American last year, was dinged up early in the year, started against Texas, played extremely well last week in that game. But they also have a freshman, Cortland Guillory, who you'll see number 4 at times at corner. But they've just been solid across the board. The linebackers, I didn't even mention them. Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie, both 4-year guys that play a lot. And they rotate a ton of guys. I mean, you'll see them platoon guys in and out in the middle of series. So I think that's the biggest thing with this defense is they've got a lot of talent. They're very experienced, and they're able to kind of flex that depth at times that kind of wears down offenses. And so they've been a really, really good unit, and it's kind of what Brent Venables envisioned when he took over is this kind of a defense. And what's crazy is they've got a lot of guys coming back next year as well, so they should be pretty good next season too.
Maybe something to keep an eye on in this game. South Carolina, on the other hand, with their defense, been better than expected, but just not quite as deep as what you're telling us about Oklahoma. So depending on game flow, depending on time of possession, maybe something to keep an eye on this one. George, before we let you go, let's talk a little bit more about the offensive side other than Mateer. I know there's still talk there about O-line play, still talk there about the running game other than Mateer, so maybe similarities to South Carolina there where the quarterback's having to do a lot of the work in terms of the rushing attack. South Carolina got out of that a little bit for the first time against LSU. Finally saw the running backs get going. What can you tell us about the run game for OU and just O-line play this year compared to maybe last year, a game South Carolina's front was kind of able to take over a little bit?
It's not good. I'll start there. It's not been great, especially in the run game. They just have not been able to find any success there, and they've had a lot of different, running backs, and the running back rotation has been a big discussion here this week. They brought in Jaden Ott, the Cal transfer that everybody thought was going to be a really dynamic player for them at running back, and he has just not gotten going. He barely plays. I don't think we'll see a ton of him this week. We saw him for one series, I think 3 snaps against Texas, and he just didn't do anything. So I don't know who it'll be. It'll probably be Torrey Blaylock, the true freshman. He's gotten the most snaps there at running back. But other than that, they haven't been able to get anything going. The offensive line, they've actually been really good in pass protection for the most part. I think they've given up maybe 13 sacks, which is actually a big step in the right direction. Last year, I think they led the country in sacks allowed with 50, and I think South Carolina had half of those. So I think that Oklahoma is looking to be a lot better in that spot this week against South Carolina. But in terms of being able to run the ball, Oklahoma just has not gotten the push they needed. And some of that's the offensive line. I think another large part of it is the tight end group. Might be one of the worst in the Power 4. They just are unable to block. They tried to rebuild that room through the transfer portal, and they just haven't been able to find a lot of success there. Now, in Jaron Kanik, he's the converted linebacker to tight end. You'll see him a lot in the passing game. He can catch some passes and do some things, but when they ask him to block guys, especially on the edge, it's kind of a disaster. So, and that's really every tight end that they have. So that's been a big problem in the run game as well. But in terms of pass protection, Oklahoma has actually been pretty good. I will say one note to watch. They did lose their starting right tackle, Derek Simmons, in the game against Texas. We'll see. I think he's going to be questionable on the availability report this week. I don't know if he's going to be able to give it a go. He didn't come back in. So look for, Stanford transfer Luke Baklenko to maybe start there at right tackle for Oklahoma, which would obviously kind of be a big loss.
George, final thing, man, any kind of keys to victory on either side, like just in terms of this specific matchup? What are you going to be looking for? What are you going to be watching for here Saturday afternoon in Columbia?
It's cliche, but it's turnovers. For Oklahoma, I think that was kind of what really did them in against Texas. The 3 interceptions were just crucial, especially the one before the half. Those things can't happen. And you look at the turnover margin, Oklahoma's just not been very good in that category. They haven't been able to, as good as the defense has been, they haven't been able to force a whole lot of turnovers. I think only 2 on the season, and both of them came against Kent State. So they've got to find a way to help this offense out, get them the ball back in some short fields, and then obviously not turn the ball over. And that's one thing that South Carolina has been very good at. John Mateer cannot throw the interceptions in this game. They can't fumble the football. I think that's going to be the difference with 2 teams that are kind of struggling right now. I think the team that can create some turnovers and give their offense maybe some short fields, I think that could be the big difference in this one.
George, we appreciate the time, man. And first trip to Columbia, right? Is that right, this weekend?
That's correct. I'm looking forward to it. Maybe we'll check out the State Fair. Any stops for the OU fans that are making this trip?
Oh, good question, man. I told you guys this on y'all's podcast. If you're going out there tailgating, like seriously, get out there early because the fair going on. It's way too many people crammed it. And they have a ton of tailgating areas. Like it is a pretty spread out. South Carolina does not have an on-campus stadium, which is a little bit of a positive on game day because there are a ton of options to tailgate, right? However, with the fair being there, if whatever you were guessing, like seriously, get out there 2 hours earlier. Like go early. I would say the night before, everybody loves Halls. If you want a steak, that's kind of a big one in Columbia. That's like the kind of upper tier, most fine dining place you can go to in Columbia, I would say. And then if you're a college student making the drive or making their ride out here, 5 Points is still kind of the place to go, Bar District. But if you're actually over 21, I would say go to the Vista. That's South Carolina's kind of just restaurant and bar area. Lots of just good spots to hang out down there and, have a beverage, have dinner, all those different things. But, yeah, I would say, man, if you want to get – so this is something people don't really talk about a ton, but the Gamecock walk before the game is actually – I know a lot of teams have that, but South Carolina does theirs really well. I think it's about 2 hours till kickoff maybe that they do that. But, yeah, the tailgating scene is awesome. The cockabooses right outside the stadium are pretty cool to walk by. It's actual literal, legitimate like cabooses from real trains that have been turned into like tailgating spaces. So,
awesome.
Yeah, lots of cool traditions. That'll be on if you go to like kind of the south side of the stadium, that's where the cockabooses are. So, yeah, man, it'll if you're making the trip, you'll have fun. Everybody will be partying. It's a typical kind of SEC atmosphere. So
we're looking forward to it. I know that because going to the games this year and obviously last year, the tailgating scene versus the some of the games in the Big 12 is just totally different. So I think a lot of OU fans are looking forward to it.
And I gotta say this, man, for you guys fans, like I was not familiar with your game, but from everything I've seen with Mateer and the whole stuff with the doctor taking on a personality of his own, Missouri has never fit into the SEC, and they've been here for forever now. Oklahoma, I feel like I can just say you're welcomed in, like you fit right in. Like y'all
There's
are
a lot of crazy. Yeah.
just crazy enough. So y'all fit right in, man. But dude, have a safe trip, have a fun trip, and as always, I appreciate the time, George.
Awesome. Thanks, Wes.
There was Wes Mitchell's conversation with George Stoia of Soonerscoop.com, giving us some insight into the Oklahoma Sooners and some advice as well for the Sooner fans coming into town this weekend for the game. We'll dive into that conversation and recap what George talked about there, and we continue to preview the Oklahoma Sooners coming up next on the Garnet Trust Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating on your Thursday on the Game.
If you've been frustrated in the past by some of the companies you've had out to your home or business when you have HVAC problems, let me give you a recommendation for a better service. That's our folks over at Krantz Cooling and Heating, Krantz, cooling with a K, KrantzCooling.com. They've been around since 1983. They're a local family-owned business, and I can personally attest to how awesome they are. They've been to my home. They've been to Wes's home. They've installed new units. They've taken care of problems for us. They've let us know exactly what is going on and help us solve the problems as they come along. You can join the Krantz Club to make sure you're on top of your maintenance. They do installations, repairs, and maintenance on all of your HVAC units. Again, they do residential and commercial, so whether you're a homeowner or a business owner or both, they can help you out. 803-672-3224. Go online to KrantzCooling.com. You can text them. You can get a visit scheduled. You can even pay your bill online or sign up. Krantz Cooling.
Welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head, Jack Felcher, and Wes Mitchell along with you here on your Thursday on the game. Getting you set for South Carolina and Oklahoma coming up on Saturday. Of course, you just heard Wes's conversation with George Stoia of Soonerscoop.com. And I don't know, do we know how many Oklahoma fans are going to be coming in this weekend? Because obviously a lot of Carolina fans excited to make the trip to Norman for the first matchup last year. And I would think there'd be quite a few coming into town this weekend, too.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see, to be honest with you. That is like I said on there, and I was talking to, I did their podcast as well, and I was talking to those guys beforehand or on their podcast, and Oklahoma is a fit for the SEC. Like, I kind of had my doubts a little bit, but just seeing the way their fan base has reacted to some things this year, reacted to some things last year, like they the stuff with what's his name, George Shin, the doctor.
Yeah.
The stuff with they're basically like tracking Mateer's thumb for the last 3 weeks, and they got enough crazy in them that they fit right in with the SEC. Probably better, like I said, probably better than like Missouri or some of the other schools that are actually in the SEC. So maybe a good crowd coming in. I don't know necessarily. I also, talking to those guys, man, that fan base is ticked off right now for a team that is 5-1.
Yep.
Like they're reacting the way Jack does to Yankees games. Like they're ready to move on at this point.
I remember going to Norman last season, and I could say firsthand experience, that place definitely had an SEC feel to it. Now, it is very remote, and I don't know why anyone would choose to go to Oklahoma willingly.
Jack just taking shots.
Shots fired.
But no, have you guys been to Norman, Oklahoma?
No,
I've not been more west than Alabama, Jack.
Talk about remote.
Wait, really?
Yeah. They've been more west than Alabama.
Wow.
Okay, we need to work on that.
We do. Talk about remote, though, with a college campus just plucked in the middle of the area.
Jack, I heard the tailgating was not that impressive.
So I'm trying to remember. I liked the scene they had there. I don't remember seeing a ton of tailgating either, but you go outside of the stadium there I think it's Oklahoma Memorial. They have tons of statues of
Heisman winners, probably.
Like they're famous,
They've got a few.
Like Sam Bradford, Baker Mayfield. A lot. Kyler Murray has a statue there too, and very detailed, by the way, as well. From what I remember, just the scene there was cool. It felt unique and a nice piece to the SEC. Now, I remember a lot of South Carolina fans made that trip last season. Like even Van and Beth, the people that have Sir Big Spur, they made the trip out there as well. So it's like, a lot of Carolina fans made that trip last year, and that's halfway across the country. I would imagine we're going to see a lot of OU fans make this trip just because it is the first time that South Carolina and Oklahoma are playing at Willie B, just like it was when Carolina went to OU last year.
And again, they're in a really good place as of right now. Again, they're not feeling great coming off the loss to Texas. And again, it's really funny that Ben Arbuckle went from being this offensive genius to being a guy that ready to run out of town after one poor performance. That I think a lot of that hinged on the health of John Mateer, but all their goals still in front of them, sitting at 5-1, top 15 team, all those kind of things. And this is their game to try and kind of get things back on track. And you hope, or they are hoping, obviously, this is not a situation where they let Texas kind of beat them twice, where they come in after an emotional rivalry game to an early kick on the road, probably the farthest they're going to travel this entire year, coming out here to Carolina and just not be themselves. They're certainly a team capable of coming in here and winning, but they obviously have their flaws, and obviously the health of John Mateer is the most paramount thing, as George pointed out, in terms of this offense being effective.
Yeah, they think he's healthy now, and, I do think just simply, not practicing last week. He got very little practice time to the extent that I'm a little bit surprised they even let him start this game. You already have, either screws or a rod or something in your thumb, and then really not much time just to kind of, I don't know, just like hone in on your mechanics and just, I'm sure he was trying to throw the football and doing all those things. But think about how game plan specific you are leading up to a game. A lot of us
we talk about the script and how a team looks so good when they're on script. Well, part of the reason that is because that's what you're repping in practice. Those are the plays you have set up for this week. Those are the plays you've maybe run a little bit more than everything else in your playbook. So this is not a guy, yes, he is a veteran of college football, and he has been in this offense for a long time, but in this scheme, has not been at Oklahoma for a long time. So I get it, and I certainly respect. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say Mateer should have sat the game out, because we all sit here and beg these guys to care and beg them, not to be about the money, and then you can't turn around and be ticked off at him for not playing or for playing when he maybe shouldn't have. Should he have been on the field? I think that is debatable, but I certainly respect him going out there and doing it. If he is right, though, they are a completely different team than if they don't have him, or, of course, if he's just not quite himself. And like George talked about, he has been, basically their entire offense. Like, they have some good receivers, obviously, but in terms of the running game, they've had to lean on him. And I think, can this South Carolina defense continue to create turnovers? Can the South Carolina defense continue to find ways to get off the field? Certainly, is going to be a big key in this game.
I think you really have to focus on, well, number one, this game, it's first and foremost with any game, but you have to stop the run. And they have Torrey Blaylock, a guy that, did not do much against Texas, had a big game for 100 yards a few weeks back, but that's really it with the run game from a running back standpoint. Jaden Ott has been massively disappointing from transferring from Cal to Oklahoma. You expected a lot more out of a guy that ran for a lot of yards with the Golden Bears. Mateer is that guy that you have to worry about. Limiting his yardage on the ground is going to be massive in this game. He's their second leading rusher on the team, 195 yards, 5 touchdowns this season. You got to make him one-dimensional, force some throws. I think that's what Texas did such a nice job of last week, was putting him into some tough situations. And I know the injury and the practice time wasn't where you'd like it to be for him, but he was still out there playing on the field. And in my mind, if you're out there on the field, even if you're not 100%, you're out there. So the expectation is that you're able to do your job, and he just simply did not. And that's kind of what South Carolina needs to do this weekend, is look at what Texas did just a week earlier, try to rattle him, force the run game to be non-existent in this game, and really make Oklahoma beat you through the air.
And I think that's something interesting that you point out there about him kind of being the focus point of the run game. And he's kind of like Lenore Sellers in a lot of ways when he has that ability to be creative and make things happen with his feet when the play breaks down. And one thing I saw that Texas did last week and watching their game, kind of similar to LSU, is when he did get free, they didn't have a lot of room to run. Like they made sure, and I'm sure they were spying a couple guys on him like guys do for Lenore Sellers as well, but trying to limit him as much as they can, because, again, they don't have a good run game to rely on. It's either him or nobody pretty much at this point. So if you can take him out of that, make him one-dimensional, like Jack said, and force him to throw the football, which, again, he struggled with last week, particularly when it came to down-the-field throws, which was his bread and butter earlier on in the season. You can put them in a situation where they're routinely in those third-and-long situations, or it makes it a whole lot harder to convert, if Mateer's having the same struggles that he was having a week ago.
Well, and I think, can you pressure him with just 4 guys is going to be a very big key to this game. And the reason why I say that is because we saw last week, South Carolina a couple times on some third and long situations. Nussmeier, who is not what you would call a runner, but is certainly athletic enough to go get the yards when they're there. South Carolina brought some pressures, kind of dropped into man coverage, and once those guys kind of almost went past him and got out of their rush lanes a little bit, Nussmeier took off running a couple of big first downs. And you're kind of going to be a little bit, if you're Clayton White, a little bit handcuffed on when you can call some of those and if you can call some of those extra pressures, because if you go man coverage behind it, then if he escapes, it's not going to be 20-yard gains. It's going to be even more than that. And so I think for them, can you rush 4 and play coverage behind it? That allows you to just drop everybody in the zone, all eyes on the quarterback. Or if you're going to play some man, that gives you a guy to leave as a spy. Whereas
we've seen South Carolina twists, stunts, all these different things you like to do up front and kind of play around. That they like to show that like double mug look where both linebackers are pressed up in the A gap. Then you either bring them or drop them, and you kind of play games with it. It really eliminates you being able to do all you would want to do, I think, schematically on 3rd and long because of that run threat. So this has not been a good Oklahoma offensive line overall in the run game. They have improved since last year in pass protection. So can Brian Thomas Jr., Dylan Stewart, whoever's on the interior on 3rd and long, can they get that pressure without having to bring that additional blitzer?
Only 3 sacks in the first 4 games Mateer started this year, 5 against Texas. You're right. The protection has been better up front. And we saw last year what happened with the offensive line, how rough it was, giving up 9 sacks to South Carolina. You don't need that type of performance, I don't think, but you definitely want to get, a couple on Mateer this weekend for sure.
Big game here in Williams-Brice Stadium on Saturday. A lot of big games going on around the SEC as well. We'll take a peek at the Week 8 SEC schedule coming up next as we wrap up the hour. Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating on your Thursday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. It's hour head Wes Mitchell, Jack Belcher wrapping up the hour here on your Thursday on the game. One benefit of playing an early game on Saturday for South Carolina is being able to get out of there mid to late afternoon, get home, and take in the rest of the weekend slate. And finally, we're sitting here midway through October. We finally get a full slate of nothing but SEC games this weekend. Nobody's playing non-conference. There are some teams on byes, but for the most part, everybody in action this weekend. You got some pretty high-profile matchups, including one that's going to go basically side by side with South Carolina and Oklahoma. LSU going on the road as an underdog to number 17 Vanderbilt in Nashville.
Who would have ever thought that would be the case here in the great year of 2025? I mean, Vanderbilt obviously is coming off the tough loss to Alabama a few weeks ago, but they've had some time to, I'm sure, reflect and get things right and returning home for what's a huge matchup with, I mean, this is like a huge prove-it game for Vanderbilt to see how legit they really are this season.
Actually, correction, every SEC team in action this weekend, nobody is on a bye. I believe this is the one weekend of the season where it's nothing but 8 SEC games, all 16 teams in action.
Guys, you know how sometimes you'll see the line come out and you're like, it just does not make much sense to me. I mean, and a lot of times when that happens, you realize, hey, Vegas knew. Last week, Texas was favored.
Yep.
Early on, I think it got bet down maybe to Oklahoma being favored, but early on, Texas favored. We find out, hey, Vegas knew something there in terms of this matchup. Well, any other time on the planet that you had said, hey, Vandy's favored over LSU, I'd be going, what are we missing in this? This year, though, I mean, Vanderbilt, we've watched South Carolina play both of these teams. Vanderbilt's the better team, in my opinion. Like, I'm not saying they necessarily win on Saturday, but if you just, based on what we have seen from both teams so far this year, I would like Vandy over LSU in this game.
I do too. They're a good football team. Like, again, they lost by 2 scores to Alabama, an Alabama team that is playing lights out right now that I don't even think anybody could beat. Like,
and they had red zone turnovers though, Jack. Like they were driving the ball.
They had opportunities for possibly 2 more scores there that obviously
good point.
Let get out of their fingers. But yeah, that is a very capable team. It's at home. They're coming off of a bye. I could see it happening.
Those 15 Vandy fans are going to be fired up on Saturday.
Well, had they finished 15. The construction? Are they still doing construction out there?
I think
I think they're still doing it because they had already completed construction on one side.
Right. Okay.
I know when we were there last year, they were still working on the other end zone. I don't know if
it's not even just that like it's the whole. And you were there last year. It's the whole area, like around like near the baseball stadium too. They're doing so much construction over there. It's crazy, but no, I mean I wonder if this is the type of game where the goalposts get torn down again and they.
No.
Not
worth it. Not worth it.
Not worth it.
Listen, we've expanded far too out on what constitutes field storming now. Did you see Colorado storming the field after beating number 22 Iowa State this past weekend?
I did.
Unacceptable. And Iowa State,
completely missed that.
Half their team was hurt. So
what was that comment that Dion had about it? It was like, I'm trying to remember, like it was something about every fan that was there, they could donate like $1 or something.
Yeah.
And it would pay the fine.
Didn't the Big 12 rescind the fine, though? Did I see that somewhere the other day?
I don't know.
Because their fines aren't as stiff as the SEC's.
No, which, I mean, yeah, if you're the SEC storming the field.
But the point is, like, number 22, what are we doing?
At this point, dude, you've got to like take down. Where's the line? You got to take down a top 5 team. I even thought, storming the field for A&M last year.
They were number 10. I mean, that was kind of ridiculous.
Like that, yeah. That's on the now beating Tennessee in 22.
After everything that team had been through.
I mean,
yes, storm away.
Storm everything.
Yes.
Like, storm the field. Like, everybody hit. Like, I get it.
Yeah. Like, nobody gave them a chance to win that game.
Yes.
Like, so.
A&M last.
But we are to the point where, like, for Vanderbilt, it's like, well, your standards should be higher now because you've actually been winning games in the past year to where beating number 10 at home.
And you're a favorite in this game.
You're a favorite.
Especially when you're a favorite.
2.5 point favorite
Shouldn't
in this
constitute you storming the field and throwing them in the Cumberland River? Is that the river that runs through Nashville?
Did anybody catch that Cole Kubelik
have not
note about, I think this is the first time Vandy's been favored.
I came across
It's
it.
been a while since they've been favored over it.
Here we go. So LSU is a top 10 team.
Yes.
Shouldn't be, but Vanderbilt has played 77 games versus top 10 teams since 1978. The LSU game Saturday will be the first time they have been favored going into one of those games.
Wow.
Per Cole Kubelik.
Crazy.
But, I mean...
It's pretty good.
That makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm not arguing with them being favored.
I'm not shocked at that stat either.
No,
you know,
not at all.
Some stats you're like mind blown. When would Vandy have been favored over a top 10 team in our lifetimes?
Maybe like one of the Franklin years, but that'd be
even
close
then,
thing to it.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But busy weekend on tap with the SEC. We'll get back into talking about Oklahoma. Take a look at the availability report once again coming up next. Start the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
All right, folks, let me tell you about our friends at Integrated Media, 803-948-8327, integratedmediainc.com. Go check out that website to learn a little bit more about what they do. They've been to my home. They've been to Chris's home. Let them come to your home as well. If you want to just upgrade your entire just technology situation at your house, they can come out. Could be simple things. Let's hang the TV on the wall. Let's hide the wires, hang the surround sound. Or maybe you want to go super high-tech, full home theater system, upgrading everything to do with that, and then adding in security and cameras as well so you get that peace of mind at your house. Also, they can connect it all to a tablet so you can run everything from one hub right there in your home. Essentially, if it involves technology at your house, they can help you upgrade that and take that vision you may have and turn it into reality. Again, if you want an idea of some things they've done all around the Midlands, head on over to integratedmediainc.com.
11 o'clock on your Thursday morning. Welcome in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris along with you here on your Thursday, getting you set for Carolina and Oklahoma coming up on Saturday, 12:45 kick. We were just talking about this in the last hour as Wes gave George Stoy of Soonerscoop.com some advice for the Oklahoma fans that are coming into town. Chris, y'all went to Oklahoma last year,
Yep.
right? What was your experience with Norman, the fans, the tailgating, that whole scene out there?
It was a blast, man. Another early game, but we got in. A lot of people stay in Oklahoma City, which Brandon Drum, also on 3, told me yesterday is like one of the fastest growing cities in the country, in Oklahoma City. But we did not. We flew into Oklahoma City. A lot of people stay there, but we stayed in Norman, not like downtown, but very easy to get to, drivable. And I'm gonna take us way off the rails. So I had some interesting Uber and Lyft experiences in Norman.
Okay.
One of the guys that took us, he was not the safest driver I've ever had.
Tyler sounded so intrigued. Okay.
And don't ask me why or how, but recently I randomly found this story about how a Lyft driver had picked up someone on campus near the student union and drove onto a sidewalk and then down some stairs, like on the sidewalk, in his car, because apparently the Lyft told him to go that way. And
right.
I saw, and this guy, like, I was like, that was my driver. Like, I saw this guy's picture. I'm like, that's him.
That was him?
It was him, 100%. And I was like, you know what? I'm not surprised whatsoever after that experience. But seriously, it was a lot of fun. We went, they got a cool kind of downtown area, a lot of Gamecock fans there. Had some cool establishments. We hit up the Mont, which is like an institution in Norman. After it was an early game, so after that we went by. They had some good tailgating going on. Like, it was a lot of fun. And Brandon Drum asked me yesterday, because I did their podcast with him, and he was like, "Well, do you?" And I know you hit on this, Wes, with your guy too, with George. Like, does Oklahoma feel like an SEC school? And I did, like, much more than Missouri. Like, it felt SEC when you're there. Like, if you were like, this is Big 12, I would have believed that too.
Sure.
But big stadium, big atmosphere. You're walking around. They've got all their championship banners and stuff up. They got the Heisman Plaza, so you hang out with Baker Mayfield's likeness over there and stuff. It was pretty impressive. And then Carolina, the game started, and then they rolled them.
Yeah, what's that thing? I was not familiar with your game.
Yeah.
Oklahoma, at first, I was like, maybe. Like, you definitely have the tradition, right? And Oklahoma, it's a logo school. It is, I guess, a traditional blue blood. I was like, yeah, I get it. But to me, Texas was like the bigger get of the two. I was most impressed once all this stuff happened with Mateer, like seeing just how psychotic they were about it, and the Dr. George Shin, just memes taking on a entirely new personality on the internet. I think they had politicians getting involved and like naming it John Mateer Day or George Shin. Just the absolute insanity of that entire thing. You've got Eddie Radosevich in the hanging out. Have you seen this, Tyler? He's hanging out.
Not.
Oh gosh, I thought it went fairly viral. He's with Sooner Scoop last week. He is a goofball. He is hilarious. He was in the bushes outside of their football operations.
I did see that. Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Reporting live.
I didn't know his name, but yeah, I saw it.
John Mateer Watch 2025. Just the absolute insanity. They fit.
Yeah.
Like I don't hear this stuff out of Missouri. They fit. And now I heard the tailgating was not quite. And I guess your mileage may vary. Like maybe people had different experiences. I talked to some people who were like, yeah, I mean it was cool, but it didn't quite have it wasn't a tailgating experience quite like here in Columbia.
Okay.
And then the game itself, you're down 21-0 before you can blink.
You're like getting to your seat and it's 21-0.
That's like what Braves Braves Cardinals a few years ago in the playoffs. Game 5 felt like for me, but that was one of those games where almost, if you're South Carolina, you're like, we scored too much too quickly. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's the entire game is left.
Yeah, and we'll get specifically back into that game more coming up here in just a second. But obviously, should be a lot of Sooner fans coming to town for this weekend. Last night, we got our first look at the availability report for South Carolina, and a lot of the same names we saw on there from last week, namely on the offensive line, as you have doubtful Nolan Hay, Case Henry, Shed Surratt now joins that list after he got hurt last week. Questionable includes Marquis Anderson, who also got hurt recently, Gabriel Downlow-Denley, who's been dinged up all season. Thankfully, though, probable is Brandon Cisse, who did go out of the game last week against LSU, and that looked bad at the time, but sounds like he should be trending towards playing this upcoming weekend. Obviously going to need him and everybody on that defense to play their best this weekend, but we continue to talk about the offensive line, and once again, looks like you're going to be out with a handful of guys that at times were all starters on the starting 5 unit.
Yeah, getting Cisse back, we would assume, with him being probable, which I take that to mean at this point, like, unless you have a setback, you should be good to go. That's obviously great news. He's been, arguably their best player on defense to this point in terms of actual production. And, those other guys, man, you really just would hope that, for one, you need Brownlow-Dendy. This is something that I picked up on from Cole Kubelik during the broadcast, how much South Carolina's defensive tackles have played compared to the rest of the league. And, I kind of thought that little trio of co-starters playing the 2 spots, it's a pretty good rotation, but apparently the other teams in the league maybe rotate those spots a little bit more. It did catch my attention. Troy Pikes played the most he has played since he came to South Carolina by a little bit against LSU. Jaron Willis at linebacker played early in this game. Played 11 snaps, not a big number, but it felt like to me that South Carolina was trying to kind of extend the rotation out a little bit more than they have before. And, I think that's important. So now if you subtract Gabe Brownlow-Dendy from that, you've lost. He's been really good for them guys. He's been phenomenal, I think. Arguably, and all 3 of those guys have actually been good, but he's maybe just the most naturally gifted of your defensive tackles on this team. And then, man, you'd love to just have one even of those offensive linemen that are doubtful. Kaysen, Nolan, and then Shed getting added on there. I did hear that Shed was doing much better, just feeling much better middle of this week than he was, on Saturday. Like, he is progressing. Now, does that mean he'll be able to play on Saturday? Certainly doubtful, makes you think probably not. But we've talked about this too, Chris. I feel like the Thursday availability report is the one that tells the story. Mm-hmm. The Friday one is where you can get cleared, it seems like. There's a lot of – if you can get to probable by today, a lot of times you're cleared by Friday. So, but this is the one. If you're doubtful today, you ain't playing on Saturday more than likely.
And it's your last real practice day.
Yes.
Rest of the week's walk through. Ideally you'd like to have these guys get as much practice time as they can too. And if they're doubtful, they've been limited or out in practice is the reality of it. So, look, I almost feel like we are. Remember in 2023, Wes and Tyler, I guess you weren't here at that point, right?
I was here.
You were here. Yeah, you were. Yeah.
That was my first.
That's right. That was your first season.
Yeah.
Well, you remember how much we had to talk about the offensive line the whole year.
Yep.
By the end of the year, we were like, guys, it would be nice to talk about, something else.
Anything else. But
that's where we are for several reasons. Number one, if you can identify the biggest area of struggle on this team, that has been that. You've had a midseason coaching change now related to the O-line, and then you've got these injuries. And then you've got the fact that Oklahoma's coming in here leading the country in tackles for loss and number 2 in sacks. And they create a ton of negative plays. They feel like they should have had more negative plays last week. I think Brent Venables said, we should have had 20. And you're going, whew. So we're still talking about the O-line, but there's a lot of reasons for that. So I think you're right, Wes. The guys on this list, Case Henry, Shed Surratt, Nolan Hay, they're all either have started games or are full-time starters. Nolan Hayes only started one game. It's the game he got injured in against Missouri. You would love to be full strength. The reality is you probably aren't going to be. Like you said, if you could get one of those guys, that'd be something. But I am wondering, what does the personnel look like given this? I keep saying this, but do we see more Jatavius Shivers? Nick Sharp finally got extended run, and apparently that was the plan going in, but Shed Surratt goes out after, 10, 12 snaps. Now it's Nick Sharp time. I thought he did some things, in that game, and he helped contribute, frankly, to a group that did help pave the way for the best rushing performance. I realized the problems in pass protection. So does this make it a lot more likely that we see more Nick Sharp? It seems likely to me.
And I would assume Boaz is back at center, maybe.
I gotta think that remains a practice. Who deals with Sean Elliott barking in their face?
I guess so.
The best.
Yeah.
That will be very interesting, though. Like, a lot of people have given up on Boaz. People are going to roll their eyes at me on this. I don't just give up on a guy when and not that the blocking itself has been perfect, and no means am I saying that, but for him, it's can you just clean up some of these communication and procedural issues, much like with the entire offensive line. I think he's lost, I don't know, some confidence, or something in there. Does a change spark something with him, with RJ Newsome? I got to imagine, from what we're hearing already out of practice, playing on Saturday is going to be easy compared to dealing with Sean all week long.
Especially at home.
Yes. Yeah. So I'll be very curious to see who emerges from that. If you're on the line right now, though, you got to be thinking, man, I got another clean slate. Like these position groups are up for grabs. You got to remember too, Chris, Nick Sharp was brought in here to be a starter. Like I know you have to earn jobs, but even within earning jobs, when coaches recruit a guy, they have an idea of how they think they will fit in. Sharp was a starter at Wake. He was recruited to be a starter at South Carolina, and then he got hurt, and then his conditioning, because he had a lower body injury, his conditioning went off the tracks. I don't know if he ever got that back. Now, even against LSU, according to PFF, who Beamer hates, kind of with him, but run block grade, thumbs up. Pass block grade, thumbs down. And so I think for him, being a bigger guy, are you able to deal with the athleticism that an Oklahoma front is going to put up there? But if you're looking for a reason, hey, could we see some positive things from this offensive line down the stretch? Could a Nick Sharp be an answer? Potentially. I don't want to say yes, but potentially. Of course, they'd love to get Shed back in there. They'd love to get Kaysen back in there at right tackle. But right now, those guys are doubtful.
Obviously, they're going to have the work cut out for them on Saturday against this very good Oklahoma defense led by Brent Venables, their head coach. We're going to hear what Mike Shula had to say about preventing havoc plays against the Sooners coming up next as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along on your Thursday here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West, Chris Long with you on your Thursday here on the game. Getting set for Carolina and Oklahoma, squaring off Saturday at 12:45 over at Williams-Brice Stadium. It's also your next opportunity to win the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Touchdown Contest. If Gamecocks can score on special teams this weekend, you could win $500. Go online to 1075thegame.com and register for your chance to win if you've not already for the Lower Lisa Special Teams Touchdown Contest. We'll get to what Mike Shula had to say in just a moment, but always appreciate y'all wanted to weigh in on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. We out to Bobby in Charlotte, who wants to know about the game plan this weekend against Oklahoma. Bobby, what's on your mind this morning?
Hey, guys. Yeah, to me, this is the biggest maybe mismatch that we've actually faced so far this season, talking about our offensive unit versus Oklahoma's defensive unit. And I just feel like if we do not score on special teams or defense like we have in previous games, that we just have such a narrow path to victory. And I understand, Oklahoma has their own offensive issues right now, lack of run game, and obviously Mateer looked off last week. But, my just primary concern is this is the last time Venables was here in Willie B. In some ways, it's a similar thing. Remember, we thought that Clemson team was so vulnerable because they had DJU at quarterback. But what wound up being the story of the game is that they just had a defense that could sit on our offense all night, which is crazy because we know that our quarterback wound up being, by the end of the game, Zeb Nolan. And now we've got Lenoris. So you would think that they're not even the same universe. But unfortunately, our offense this year is every bit as bad as it was in 2021. So, how would you even game plan attacking that Oklahoma defense? Because that's my primary concern, guys. We know the stat. We haven't scored more than 17 offensive points through 6 games against a P4 opponent, maybe against anybody, actually, right, that we played this season. And now we're about to play the best defense by far that we faced all season, and they're probably pretty PO'd after the Texas game.
Yeah, appreciate the call there, Bobby. 803-404-6100. You did have 21 offensive points against Kentucky a couple weeks ago, but that is the highest mark the Shula offense has scored so far in the now 7 games we've seen him at the helm for Carolina. And I want to transition that perfectly into what Mike Shula had to say yesterday in terms of trying to prevent havoc plays against Oklahoma, which is something that Sooners defense is really, really good at. And here's what he had to say.
Yeah, and they're, as I've said in the past, they're no different than any other position. Yeah, one of the things we can all do better is just stay out of the negative plays and the long yardage situation. That's going to make everybody look better, whether or not you're an offensive lineman, a quarterback, or a receiver, or a back. And but yeah, collectively, to the points you bring up, sometimes it's technique, sometimes it's communication, sometimes it's timing. Okay, and then that's not just saying, hey, the players got to do this. No, it's all of us kind of doing that together. So, and yet doing it in a way where you're not panicking or overreacting and just doing something, changing things just because you feel like you have to, where right there, if you look at it, we're just that far away from it. So there's a lot of that. I know that doesn't look like that, but as coaches and as players, I think we see it, and that's what kind of drives us to get to be on the plus side of the differences.
And Beamer pointed this out the other day that, on Mondays he takes a look at his opponent's havoc plays, and it seemed like Oklahoma had about twice as many as anybody that he'd watched on film so far. They're towards the top of the nation when it comes to sacks. They're towards the top of the nation when it comes to tackles for losses. Like, they get in the backfield and they wreak havoc consistently. And again, when you have a shaky offensive line that just let go of its offensive line coach, that seems like that's going to be a problem this weekend as well.
Yeah, appreciate the phone call, Bobby. Lots of really good thoughts there, in my opinion. And I like that he acknowledged, the actual matchup. A lot of times we're guilty of just kind of looking at teams in general, like good team, bad team, good versus good. But really it comes down to those matchups like he's talking about. And I agree, it's not on paper a great matchup for South Carolina. I think if you're looking for hope in this one, for one, it is at home, which I always think helps you on offense, especially when you have an offense that has dealt with so many just we've talked about it freaking all season long, honestly, the procedural issues. What would this offense be, I would say, without losing 5 yards here, 5 yards there, when you actually do have a successful drive in the making, and then you kind of throw in the brakes. So I would say, can South Carolina clean those things up? On the other side, you have an Oklahoma offense that actually a lot of their fans are saying very similar things about, even with the addition of Mateer. And I thought this was an insane stat. Hopefully it's true. From Michael Bratton, SEC Mike. Oklahoma, he tweeted this yesterday, Oklahoma has not scored more than 2 offensive touchdowns against an SEC defense since joining the SEC.
Wow.
So you look at some of Oklahoma's offensive totals this year when they've played actual opponents, when they've played good teams, and it ain't pretty either. So the path is certainly going to have to be, you would imagine, a lower scoring game. But Oklahoma, you can clearly pull some of those stats where you're saying for a long period of time, they're not putting up a lot of points on offense. If you're South Carolina, I think one key, can you kind of steal that first touchdown when you're on script? Like if you're saying, hey, we got to get to 24 points to win this game, I start going, all right, where can we steal points from? So in terms of keys, they've been very good on script. Can you score the first time you have the ball? Now you're down to 17, right? Can you hit all of your field goal opportunities, not just 1 out of 2, which ended up being a massive miss at LSU? Can you not turn the ball over if you do get down there inside the 20? Vanderbilt game is a completely different game. Plays out completely differently if you score there instead of throwing that pick that changes the entire momentum of the game. So, I think Bobby raises a great point. But in terms of the two teams just going head to head, Carolina's offense against their defense, it's going to come down to can you just execute those things we're talking about in those key situations of the game and avoid disaster. As havoc-causing as they are, they have not created a lot of turnovers, has Oklahoma, which is shocking.
And South Carolina's been actually pretty good at not turning the football over. I mean, you mentioned the one against Vandy, but just generally, if you look at the problems with this offense, you're not going, oh my gosh, they're turning over the football at an alarming clip. They've had some, but it's not been the biggest issue. It's not even been in the top, 3 or so to me. And Bobby mentioned the, 2021 Clemson game. I mean, you can look at now Venables wasn't there at this time. He had gone to Oklahoma. 2023 Clemson game. Clemson wins that game 16-7. Didn't score an offensive touchdown. They had, 3 field goals, and they had the fumble recovery on the backwards pass.
First play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, look, I think the concerns are valid because if you're saying, hey, I think South Carolina can win this game, or if they do, they will have to reverse some trends, and they're going to have to reverse them against a team that is certainly the best equipped of any opponent that they've played so far to make you pay for some of those areas that you've struggled in. But this is not a South Carolina offense that you look at and go, okay, they just can't pass the ball. They haven't done it at all. They can't run the ball because they just went on the road and ran the ball against a really good team. Problems are none of those aspects have been consistent. It's been Missouri, can't run the ball, great success passing it. It's been LSU, great success running the ball, can't pass it. Can you put those two things together and balance it out a little bit more? And then the biggest problem with this offense, the negative plays and the penalties. Now, for sure, Oklahoma is going to really test you more than anybody else, but is there a world in which South Carolina can cut down on, can you limit the negative plays? There will be some. And can you have a performance on the pre-snap stuff like you had in your last home game against Kentucky where you just have a false start? We're not leaving that game going, oh my gosh, there are 4, 5, 6 false starts. If you can do that, then you have a path. And if you can play well defensively against an Oklahoma offense that has not been great, as you just laid out, Wes, then there is a path.
Yeah, and real quick, Tyler, I always, now you do start to get into some small sample sizes here when you do this, but I always like to go ahead and sort the stats by what did you do against conference opponents as well. Oklahoma's only played 2 SEC games this year, but 2 offenses, as much as we people are complaining about South Carolina's offense. They're 13th in the SEC against conference opponents. Oklahoma, 2 spots below them, second to last, averaging 15 points a game against SEC defenses this year. Of course, how healthy is John Mateer? Sure. How back to normal is John Mateer will be a key to that as well.
We'll take a rewind look at last year's game coming up next. As we hit this break, your opportunity to win a Firehouse Subs tailgating platter. Caller number 4 right now at 803-404-6100. Win yourself that tailgating platter. Again, 803-404-6100 as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along into Thursday here on the game.
14 points to Carolina in the first ever meeting. Hawkins, freshman, takes it in the pocket, gets in as he throws it into coverage again, and picked off again at the 40 of Carolina down the near sideline. That's Eman Worry towards the end zone. Are you kidding me? Touchdown Carolina. Touchdown Nick Eman Worry. Pick 6. Dylan Stewart with the pressure. Eman Worry runs it into the end zone for his second pick 6 on the season.
Welcome back in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris with you on your Thursday. That was the call last year in Norman, Oklahoma. Only about 5 minutes into the game when Nick Eman had the pick 6 that put South Carolina up 21-0. They would go on to cruise to the 35-9 victory, which of course would start the 6-game winning streak to close out last year and get South Carolina all the way up to 9-3 and on the cusp of the college football playoff. And I know, Chris, you mentioned earlier being at that game and saying, wow, 21 points in the first 5 minutes. Oh, well, there's still 55 minutes to play. What's going to happen then? Thankfully, Oklahoma's offense couldn't really fight its way out of a wet paper bag. They eventually turned back to Jackson Arnold later in that game after him being on the bench to start, and still they only scored 9 points at the end of the day.
Yeah, they were pretty bad offensively last year and still had a really good defense, which was even more incredible because they got no help really from most of the season. But, yeah, Carolina just from start to finish, they didn't do a lot on offense in that game. They had the early Rocket Sanders touchdown. They had the explosive touchdown to Josh Simon later in the game on a really nice play. But really the defense carried the day. Oklahoma, later in the game, you're trying to manufacture something. They try a fake punt. Demetrius Knight swallows that thing up. Nothing was working, and 9 sacks. First play, they decided to try to block Dylan Stewart with a tight end. Didn't work. There were other plays where they're sitting there and, I think there was a 4th down, I think it was, later. It kind of okay, if you're going to have any chance to get back in, you got to convert this. And obvious passing situation, Kyle Kennard, you look out at the formation, you're like, he's probably going to be singled up against the left tackle. This will probably be a sack. And that's exactly what happened. So, they just dominated them. And, Oklahoma this year, guys, have a few injuries on the O-line. They've had some guys banged up. They've not been great there. They've been better overall offensively. They've been able to run the ball a little bit. They've got John Mateer, who's certainly very capable. But once again, a team that hasn't been dynamic on offense, and it shows.
Yeah, that was just the example of a defense and just single-handedly taking over a football game. Typically, you need complementary football to win a game, and the defense, probably unlike any I've ever seen, just took over this game from the very beginning. I remember there was a big discussion, I feel like, after, well, hey, did the offense go conservative the rest of the way? And I think it's one of those things where even if you're not calling the game conservatively, if you're South Carolina on offense, you're going, hey, don't let them back in this game. You're up 21-0, and there's been no signs whatsoever that Oklahoma can score a bunch of points on you. The last thing you want to do is throw a pick 6 and let them back in the game. So I remember just thinking, not entirely concerned too much about the offense in this game and what's going on in terms of them not putting up a bunch of points because the defense kind of did it for you. You did have the early turnover that was not a pick 6 and was not run back, and the offense answered and scored and took advantage of being in great field position, which was a good sign early in that game too. So, it was kind of a dominant effort, and us just seeing, hey, this team can go play well and can win games against what ended up not being, a great Oklahoma team, but certainly at the time you're going, on paper, hey, you're going to Oklahoma. At the beginning of the year, you would have circled that as a tough game to win. This one, guys, still just feels like this year is a game that it's going to be played in a box. You just wonder, every now and then on paper, when it looks like one thing, something entirely different breaks out in football. It makes everybody look stupid. You know what I'm saying? On paper, there should not – I don't even know what the over-under is. On paper, it should be under without even looking at the number.
Right.
But every now and then – for whatever reason, a track meet just breaks out. It just happens.
Yeah,
So-
we're all expecting 17-10. It's going to be 35-38 or something ridiculous like that. But, the big key to last year's game was those early defensive turnovers and obviously the pick six by Nicky Minori there that helped really kind of put the game out of reach in terms of what Oklahoma was capable of on offense. And we talked about the same thing last week going into LSU, knowing your limitations on offense, knowing how good they were going to be on defense, saying, hey, you're probably going to be helped out if you can generate some takeaways here. Now, I put it in the instance of some takeaways that either score you points or put you in the position to score points. Didn't exactly happen that way, but Carolina did take points off the board for LSU a couple times when they were down deep into the red zone. So whether that's a swing of 6 points or 14 points, regardless, it was really big in keeping them in that game, and that's going to be a big key coming up on Saturday as well.
Guys, I think Oklahoma enters this game in a weird place, too. This is something I talked about with George Stoy at Soonerscoop.com. If we're looking in on this game from the outside, are we not thinking, all right, Oklahoma 5-1. When healthy, they have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. They should be fairly happy right now. I know they're coming off of a loss to a rival, and I get that, believe me, completely. A headline right now from Ari Wasserman on 3.com. Brent Venables enters the most critical stretch of his Oklahoma tenure.
Yes.
Yep.
The Oklahoma fans at 5-1 are not happy. They were just sitting there waiting for their reason to pounce.
It's worth noting as well, Brent Venables in the back half of the season, he's been there for 3 years, is year number 4, right at 500, 9-9 in the last 6 games of the regular season in his 3 years so far. So this is kind of the point where they start to slide a little bit when you enter that back half of the season, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of where, fans are not applauding at, let's go before the Texas game. They're not really feeling this, right? Because they're going, okay, cool. Like, we beat Michigan. We should beat Michigan this year.
Yeah.
We're Oklahoma. We beat Auburn. Auburn's not very good. And then, we went to Temple and beat them. Whoop-de-doo. We beat Kent State, and we beat the Illinois State Redbirds to open the season. Show me something else. Well, now you're getting into the show me portion, and the heat will turn up significantly if they come on the road and lose this game. But then, guys, after that, Ole Miss, top 5 team, at Tennessee, a bye week, at Bama, and then you host Missouri and LSU.
You can make an argument they might not win another game the entire year.
You can make an argument they'll win a bunch of them. I mean, but you can see, especially if they lose this South Carolina game, this could go from, all right, this is a season where they started well enough, they could turn this thing around, to going very much in the opposite direction.
We've seen all this buzz this week about a change possibly at Florida.
Mm-hmm.
How empowered are ADs feeling right now, seeing that Penn State said, we don't care that you made the college football playoff last year. If we are ready for a change, we're going to make a change. And we've seen now, last year was very much, let's just put the money into NIL, and we're not going to make coaching changes for the most part. We're just going to basically give our coaches lots of resources and give them an even better chance of winning. Well, when you do that, and then the winning does not follow, then the other shoe drops, basically. Yep. And now you have coaches getting fired. And so for Franklin, they went all in on, hey, we made the CFP. Let's go win the thing. It has not worked out. If you are sitting there, if you're Oklahoma, is this a situation? He is obviously, Venables has not been there near as long as Franklin was at Penn State. But are you at a situation where you already have people in powerful positions that aren't believers in you, and now they're just waiting for their stretch to go pounce and get rid of you?
Venables does have a big buyout, but A, offset language,
yep,
and B, monthly installments for 5 years. So that's another thing that you can bake in. It's not, hey, we owe you $40 million tomorrow.
Sure.
So that matters too, I think.
We'll expand on these thoughts, wrap up the hour up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Thursday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you here on your Thursday on the game. Again, Saturday, Gamecocks and Sooners, 12:45 kick over at Williams-Brice Stadium. Coverage begins that morning at 7:30, bright and early for Gamecocks game day with myself and Elijah Campbell over at Jay's Corner at the corner of Rosewood and Bluff. We'll bring you right into network coverage that takes you up to kickoff at 12:45. We were mentioning this at the end of that last segment because it is an interesting situation with Brent Venables. And again, here's a guy that was a longtime assistant at Clemson, coordinated some of the best defense we've seen at a national championship level, could have gone to a lot of different jobs over the years, waited for a big one like Oklahoma to open up, and he ended up, going there, and his results have not been the best. They had the 10-win season in 2023, but outside of that, it's been 500 play, and again, you're staring down the barrel of a daunting final, now 6 games, starting with South Carolina, and plenty of ranked teams after that, and, it's kind of forgotten, but his name wasn't one of the ones on hot seat boards going into the year because of how last season went. And again, they start off the year strong, so that talk has certainly died down, and that conversation now more revolves around the Billy Napiers and the Hugh Freezes of the world. But Brent Venables' job was not safe going into this year by any means, and if they can't have a strong end of the season, who knows what happens?
Yeah, they're just in a weird place right now, and it's weird talking about a 5-1 team right now. It's kind of, Chris and I talk a lot about Gamecock fans getting pre-mad about stuff happening. There's a lot of Oklahoma fans, especially coming off this past week, who are already mad about what they think is about to happen and already deciding how they're going to react. And, what if what happened against Texas was a blip and just, hey, Mateer didn't really practice last week. He was hurt. Not himself, and then, boom, they snap out of it and finish the year on a strong note. What if that game was just a sign of things to come? What if really none of their wins to this point are all that impressive, and Texas has exposed a couple things for you, and everybody else kind of uses the blueprint a little bit. Your offense just still isn't good enough, and you realize you can't just consistently win in the year 2025 with just defense, no matter how good that defense may be. How much of some of those defensive numbers are a little bit, they're still great, but just a little bit inflated by the opponents you've played, the offenses you've played. You beat Auburn, who has been terrible on offense. You beat Michigan, who had a freshman quarterback, no matter how highly recruited he was going on the road for the first time. What if you're only great on defense and not like elite #1 defense in the country type good? That changes the calculus for who you are as a team and what it takes to beat you as a team.
Yeah, it's I think people, including myself, had higher hopes for, not like in the sense of rooting for Oklahoma's offense, but I thought that they would be better than they have been. Now, they've been improved from last year, which was a low bar to clear. But, you look at now Auburn, they're not good as a team, but defensively Auburn's been quite good. Oklahoma didn't have a great performance there. Certainly you look at the Texas game. A week after Florida, who'd struggled a lot offensively, just went up and down the field on Texas. Oklahoma struggles there. So are they that much better? Are they significantly better to where they can tackle this stretch that they've got coming up, starting in Columbia? And then we just laid it out in the last segment. They have a slew of top 15 type teams down the stretch. And, defensively, I still think they're certainly good enough to win a bunch of those games. But offensively, are they? Was that game against Texas more of a, blip on the radar, or is that a little bit more of who they are against SEC competition? I think that's the question.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're going to find out on Saturday. And again, like Wes said a little bit earlier, the 10,000-foot view, you say, oh, there's no way South Carolina has a chance in this game. Look at the rankings, look at the records, and all that kind of stuff. But you see a pathway, and it's not going to be easy. And again, you have an offense that is struggling to score in the high teens, in the Shula era, and it's going to be even tougher going up against this defense. But, can the other elements of the game, the defense, special teams, can they help you out? And again, it doesn't necessarily have to mean them scoring points themselves, but putting you in good situations over and over again to help your offense make their job a whole lot easier.
Put you in good situations, avoid scoring opportunities for your opponent to where, like we saw against LSU, maybe you have a good drive going, your opponent does, but you find a way to keep them out of the end zone. Oklahoma, one of the best red zone teams in the entire country. And, they've scored every time they've been in the red zone this year, which does not feel like something you typically see from a team that is not good on offense. South Carolina, one of the best teams in the SEC on defense at forcing field goals when their opponent is in the red zone. So something we'll obviously have to give in terms of that. And still plenty more for us to break down because we got one more show to go to talk South Carolina, Oklahoma. Tyler.
We will do that tomorrow and play or buy or sell and look ahead to the weekend as well. I'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show, myself and Bill Gunner up next here in your Thursday on the Game.